Hello, and welcome to this webinar for PTE Speaking. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you're doing well today, wherever you may be. My name is Julian Burnley. I am based in London, in England, and it's 11 a.m. at the moment where I am. It was sunny this morning, not so sunny anymore. It's a bit overcast, but I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. If it's the morning, like me, or whether it's into your afternoon or even your evening. So thank you very much for joining. And this is our webinar for teachers called I Teach PTE Speaking. I'm going to give it maybe a minute more before we start, and then we'll kick off with the session. You'll notice from your settings here in Zoom that we do have the question and answer open. So you can ask questions related to teaching speaking, related to speaking questions. If you do have questions about speaking, I'm happy to answer them. And we'll have some time at the end of the webinar where I'll go through and answer some questions. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. I can see we've got quite a few participants already, which is great. And it's 2 minutes past the hour now. So I'm going to share and we're going to kick off with the session. And then as I confirmed, you can see there's a Q&A box, which is for questions and answers. And here we go. Okay, so I teach PTE Speaking. Before we start, I'm just going to briefly introduce myself. So my name is Julian Burnley. I work for the Pearson Test of English team. I'm a product manager and I focus on preparation. My experience is mainly in teaching. I'm qualified with a CELTA, a Cambridge Delta, and a master's in TESOL, which should have taken me 2 years. It took me about 3.5 years because I was doing it alongside working, but I got there in the end, which is the main thing. I've been teaching since 2007. I've also been a teacher trainer across Cambridge, Delta, and Trinity diploma programs. And I would say my professional interests around teaching English include pronunciation, was sort of my main focus, assessment, and also providing students and learners with feedback. Outside of work, I'm a big football fan. I support a team called Queen's Park Rangers, and I'm also supporting England women at the moment. So I don't know if you've realised that England's women's team are in the final of the European Championships against Spain, which is on Sunday. And this would be the second European Championships that England women have won, which would be a fantastic achievement and is much more than the men. So I'll be watching that on Sunday, hoping that England women win the tournament. Okay, so enough about me. In this webinar, we're going to focus on 3 things. So we're going to really focus on the language that your students need in order to successfully complete speaking questions for PTE Academic and for PTE Core. And we're going to focus on 4 speaking questions only. So we're going to focus on describe image, Retell lecture, summarize group discussion, which is the new question in the updated test, and respond to a situation, which is also the new question in the updated test for PTE Academic, but it's already in PTE Core. And we're going to look at some useful language that you can teach your students, how you can integrate it into your curriculum, and then we're going to briefly look at some Pearson resources at the end. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the scoring criteria and the score guide and pull out areas where it looks at language. So language could be expressions, could be functions, could be vocabulary, could be collocations, it could be grammar. All this is sort of language. And a lot of the session today is focused on the enhanced PTE academic test. So that's the test that launches on the 7th of August with some changes. So This is a brief slide. So this is the new score guide for the enhanced PT academic test for the 7th of August onwards, and it already has a lot of information. And as a teacher, this should be your go-to guide for questions and for anything that comes up. It's a fantastically useful resource, and it helps you understand what is being marked through the AI engine, also what the human raters are marking for some of these questions in terms of content. So it's your guide, and there's some information here around PT Academic and PT Core in terms of being English language tests. So first things first are the questions in the speaking section. This table is a little bit confusing because we've got PT Core and PT Academic. The purple bit here represents PT Core, and this is from the updated test. So if we look at PT Academic and PT Academic UKVI, where the updated test changes are happening from the 7th of August, we have Read Aloud, which will be speaking score only. PT Core is speaking and reading from the 7th of August. Repeat sentence is speaking and listening. Describe image is speaking. Retell lecture is speaking and listening. Answer short question is listening only for PT Academic, but it's also listening and speaking for PT Core. And then summarized group discussion is speaking and listening for PT Academic, and for respond to a situation, it is speaking. So you can notice some of the changes through the enhanced test from the 7th of August, including that Read Aloud will no longer contribute to your reading score, to your learner's reading score, and Answer Short Question and PT Academic will no longer contribute to the speaking score. It's only a listening activity. It's still in the speaking section because there's a verbal response. Test takers need to have their headsets on and use their microphone. So here's a summary of the questions in the enhanced test for the speaking section. And here are some of the traits that are being assessed. So in PT Academic for enhanced, you'll realize that content is being scored from 0 to 6 for questions like describe image, retell lecture, summarize group discussion, and respond to a situation. PT Core is slightly different. Describe image will stay 0 to 5 and respond to a situation. We do not have content as a trait. We have appropriacy, which is 0 to 3. And then pronunciation and oral fluency remain the same. So the main enhanced changes are to do with content. Okay, but today there's been quite a lot on the enhancements for PT Academic, which you can find online on YouTube. My colleague Jared has done a number of fantastic webinars around some of the changes, but today we're going to focus specifically on some of the language that you need. So looking at the updated enhanced rubric, this is what it looks like. So this is describe image and this is the content. And to let you into not necessarily a secret, but the way that this works is that a test taker will sit their test and they will respond to each question. So in the enhanced test, there'll be 5 to 6 describe image questions. And these are the rubrics, these are the traits that their responses are scored against. So for example, for describe image, every single response will go to AI first. It will go to the AI engine and it will be scored against this rubric of 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. For content, it will also be scored the AI engine for oral fluency and for pronunciation. After that, every single response for describe image is then sent to a human marker who will score the content only. And the content will be scored again from 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. They will not score oral fluency or pronunciation. They will only score the content. They do not have any test taker information. All they have is the audio of the test taker and then information about the question, like the image, and they will score it. To let you into a secret, this is exactly what the human raters use when they're looking through these questions. Describe image currently is scored for content anyway by human markers, and they will just go through the bullet points. So you can see for each one, there are 3 bullet points, and they will go through and they will decide where the response sits for each single bullet point. So for example, if it's here, the response describes the image fully and accurately and expands on relationships between features of the image to provide a nuanced interpretation. So you might think, okay, that's there. They might think a variety of expressions are used with ease and precision, maybe not there, maybe here. and then maybe they think a listener could build a complete mental picture. It's here, and then they'll give an overall score. So they can be across different scores, and then they might then give a 6 for content, and then they move on to the next response. So this is the traits for describe image, Retell lecture, and summarize group discussion. But what I've done here is I pulled out some of the bullet points that relate more to language. So for example, if you want a 6 for describe image, Retell lecture, or summarize group discussion for content, it says here a variety of expressions and vocabulary used throughout appropriately and with ease and precision throughout the response. So we've got a variety, so different types of words, collocations are used in a very easy way, very precise way. And then I've added this in for describe image because I think this is really interesting. A listener could build a complete mental picture of the image from the response. So the way that I think about this is if you close your eyes and you hear someone speaking, that you can visualize and you can see what they're talking about. So for example, if I give you an example of describe image, if you close your eyes and you have a test taker who says, this is an interesting image, it shows 1.5%, it also has 2%, it has 3% and 5%. 5% is the highest. It's very difficult to build a complete mental image with that information. Where if someone says the image shows a bar chart across the years 2017 to 2020, there are 2 bars per year, and they represent partners and students, and they carry on like that. They're giving a lot more detail, which helps to build a complete mental image. And then we go down here and we have things like 5, a variety of expressions are used appropriately. So that's still very strong. Then it goes lower down. So for 4, the range of expressions and vocabulary is sufficient, but maybe some repetition. And below 3, we've got the range of expressions is narrow and simple expressions are used repeatedly. Then it goes further down. 2 for content, limited vocabulary, simple expressions dominate. So very simple expressions. And then vocabulary and expressions are highly restricted. And then finally 0 is responses relevant to the prompt, but too limited. So maybe there's also very much reliant on just what they can see. And then respond to a situation is slightly different. It says things like expanding beyond the prompt language. So respond to a situation where a test taker, given a situation, they have to respond for up to 40 seconds. The language requirements are slightly different. And it goes to, here we go. So a 2 out of 6 would be communication is heavily reliant on using the language from the prompt without reformulation. So someone who's just using the language from the prompt that they can see on the screen without trying to change those words. And then PT Core is different again for respond to a situation. So it's rated out of 0 to 3. So PT Core, our test for Canada, is different. It does not go to human marking, and it's like this. So when we think of language, we think about different things. We think about a variety of language. So is your learner using a variety of words, or are they just repeating the same words again and again? Is it an original response? So have they made it on the spot? Is it a genuine response? Or are they just reading something they've learned? And is it accurate? So are they using the right vocabulary in an accurate way? So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into the second part of this webinar, and we're going to look at the different speaking question types, starting with describe image. I'm going to look at some useful language that you could teach your learners as a teacher. So here's describe image to start with. Okay, so here is an example of a describe image. It's a bar chart, and we need to think about what useful phrases our learners could use when describing this. They only have 40 seconds. They have 25 seconds to prepare, and then they have 40 seconds. So this is quite a simple bar chart. Your student might start by opening up and talking about what the bar chart shows. Let me see if I can do this one in 40 seconds. Let me just get my phone and see if I can put on a timer. So an example could be, just stop watching. So this bar chart shows how teenagers felt about climate change. 600 teenagers were surveyed in America in 2018. Straight away, we can see that the strongest and most common feeling was feeling afraid. This was around 56%. Motivated was the second highest reason at 53%, and then feeling angry was 51%. The lowest feeling was feeling uninterested, which was 20%. But we can see that afraid, motivated, and angry were the top three reasons here. And we can also see that most of the reasons were negative. I'm going to stop there at 39 seconds. So what I did there was I used a variety of language. I started my task by talking about what the bar chart shows, and then I went into some details. I didn't mention everything. I didn't mention helpless, guilty, or optimistic. I sort of focused on what I felt were the main features, these three ones. I could have spent maybe the last bit of time talking about these ones, but I chose to sort of group some together. Here's another one, which is similar. Again, it's a more complicated bar chart, talking about the number of extinctions. And you can see in my previous answer, I sort of explained what the bar chart shows. Then I went and talked about what I felt sort of was the overview, how I compared the data. So I said afraid was the highest, motivated was second. I said uninterested was the lowest. And the same here, I might say the bar chart shows the number of extinctions from the 16th to the 20th century. There are two bars. Green represents plant species, purple represents animal species. We can see straight away that the 20th century had the highest number of extinctions for plant species and animal species. It was 45 for plant species, 450 for animal species. And we can see that extinctions has increased century by century. So plant species has gone from 0 to 45 across 5 centuries. Animal species has gone from 25 to 450 across 5 centuries. And the biggest jump was between the 19th century and the 20th century. So my response is very specific to the question. I'm using a variety of language. I'm explaining the key features, and I'm helping a human marker by being able to visualize what I'm saying by saying little things like plant species, animal species, plant species is green, and trying to keep that within 40 seconds. Ideally, you don't want your learners to be cut off. They want to sort of just finish maybe a second or two before 40 seconds. For content, they need to sort of speak for between 30 to 40 seconds to really get a high score and cover the content requirements. And this is a more simplistic, I wouldn't say, sorry, it's not more simplistic, but it's a different type of image. So this is a table. It shows the most popular leisure activities for 2 groups living in city areas and the countryside. And then I can then go and explain some kind of overview. So I'd probably pull out that for urban residents, the most popular activity was eating out, 45% for 18 to 30-year-olds, 48% for 31 to 45-year-olds. For 18 to 30-year-olds, the most popular activity was physical exercise, 43%, and for 31 to 45-year-olds, it's 45% for further education. Then I will go into some of the details. But you can see what I'm doing here. I'm talking about the overview. I'm trying to provide details. I'm providing numbers as well. I'm providing percentages. So let's look at some of the language that I was using. So here's the first lot of language that's really important for your student to be able to use flexibly. So we've got describing images, graphs, and charts. So we've got verbs here mainly. So the bar chart presents information about, provides data about. I also think it's really important for your learners to know different words for different types of images. So we've got bar chart, line graph, pie chart, pyramid chart. Sometimes we have those pyramid charts, right? I think I've seen one with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We have flow charts, we have maps sometimes, or it might just, if it's PTE core, it will just be an image. So this is an image of a teacher in a school setting, blah, 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 blah. So it's important for your learners to know these different graphs. If they just say the image shows, it's not very precise. So can they be more precise? especially if it's a pie chart. If it's just the image shows, blah, blah, blah. So try to be more precise. We've got talking about an overview. So overall, we can see from an overall perspective, what we can see straight away, comparing the overall data. These are really important structures. And it's fine for your learners to use structures. Structures are an effective way of learning a language. We have, through lots of methodology and approaches, we have the lexical method, which is a very popular approach to learning, where learners can quickly find these chunks of language, and they can use them in writing and speaking. So it could be something like in conclusion or things like that. What I'm saying here, though, is that it's important that test takers have a variety of these chunks of language that they can use flexibly. So in any response that I'm talking about, I'm not going in thinking I'm going to use the word from an overall perspective. I'm thinking there's different ways, and I could say from an overall perspective, or I can see straight away, or overall, or comparing all the data, or comparing the values. So they need to have all these different chunks of language so that they can then quickly respond. And then we've got superlatives and comparatives. So you'll notice when I was responding, I was using a lot of superlatives. I think I was using superlatives more than comparatives. So things like the most common, the highest, the lowest, the smallest. So this adjective plus est, or most if it's an adjective with 3 syllables or more, and then comparative. So it was higher in blah blah blah. It's a really important language for your test takers to know, and for your learners to be able to use flexibly, again, to know the rules, to know common adjectives that you might use. You've got highest, lowest, smallest, things like that. And then we've also got verbs, nouns, and adjectives for trends. So we've got things like increase dramatically. So that's a fantastic adverb. Marginally, there was a sudden increase. So there we've got adjective, noun. We've got colors and numbers. I think colors and numbers are so important. A response should not just be colors. Obviously, it shouldn't just be 2007 shows a blue bar, and then 2008 shows a green bar, and then 2009 shows it needs to actually talk about what the data shows. But you've got colors and also numbers, and there's lots of challenges that students have with numbers. If we look back at some of this, so here we've got percentages. So we've got 60, 50, 40, 45, 46%, 52%. So again, the pronunciation of these numbers is really important. Also notice that many learners have problems with differentiating numbers, like 14% with your stress on the second syllable, 14 being 1-4, or 40%, 40, with your stress being on the first syllable. So that can cause confusion as well. If you've got someone who's saying different numbers, it's going to pick up differently. And then also we've got things here, like here we've got percent again, but we've got here century. So 17th, 18th, 200, 250. We could have decimals, 1.5. We could have thousands, 20,000, 200, 5 million. So all these different numbers are really important for your test takers to be able to pronounce. You don't, if they struggle with numbers and your learner can't talk about thousands very quickly, it's going to cause disfluency as well. So if they're thinking 500, 500,000, it's not going to be good for their fluency either. And then we've got quantifiers. So we've got things like almost all shoppers, most, hardly any, and things like that. So here's some example of the vocabulary that you can teach your learners for describe image. These are 6 key ones. This webinar will be on YouTube, after as well. So you can always come back and think, am I teaching my students this type of vocabulary for describe image? And then I suppose, like anything, when you're teaching, it's about supporting them to understand the vocabulary that you're teaching. And then it's about practice. So giving them specific practice of different language items. Going back to like our CELTA qualifications of what makes effective teaching, this would be the practice stage. So normally what you would do in your lesson, you would have your presentation, which would be, you might focus on one or two of these. You wouldn't teach all of them in one lesson because it would be cognitive overload. You might teach one or two. You'd support them so that they can use them flexibly. And then you'd go on to some kind of practice. It might be written and speaking practice. So for example, if it was superlatives, they could write sentences using different superlative sentences that they create about different describe images. That gives them an opportunity to use different superlatives like the highest, the largest, the smallest, the most common, things like that. And then here's another practice activity idea, which is giving your students 3 to 5 graphs, charts, or diagrams and asking them to write or say or record an overview of the main trend, and then they're peer correcting, they're peer checking, and things that they could have one image each, and then you're going around the class and they're all presenting to each other. They could have a feedback box that they're ticking to give feedback. Peer correction is really important, and things like that. So that's describe image. We're going to move on. Oh, we have a few questions, sorry, which I've added in about describe image. So here we've got, what if my student repeats language in a response, like increase, 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 and after that, after that, after that. Okay, so to give you an example of that, if it was something like this, so if your test taker said, this is an image which shows estimated number of extinctions. Animal species is 25 in the 16th century, decreased to 17th century, 10. After that, 25, 18th century. After that, 100 in the 19th century, then increased to 450. Plant species, 0 in the 16th century, 0 in the 17th century, increased to 5 in the 18th century, increased to 30 in the 19th century, increased to 45 in the 20th century. That's going to receive quite a low score for content, although it is talking about the data, which is fantastic. It is focused very much on the specifics. Let's have a look where we think that could come. It's focused very much on the specifics, and the expressions and vocabulary is very narrow, right? You can see it was all increase, 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 decrease, decrease, decrease. After that, after that, after that. So again, it would be between a 3 and a 2 for very limited vocabulary. So your test taker does need to use your learner needs to use a variety of vocabulary. Can my student use the same vocabulary across different questions? So yes, that's fine. So please remember that when the AI and when the human are marking them, all questions are marked separately. So it's not like you have a human who's listening to 2 questions and then thinking, oh, look at the similarities. It's just the 40 seconds the human is listening to, and then they will mark it. So it's within that 40 seconds for describe image. Are they using a variety of vocabulary, or are they just repeating themselves? And then I've said, what if my, this is another question. What if my student just repeats language from the prompt? So again, they will receive a low score for content if they're just repeating language from the prompt. So an example could be for describe image. If they're just saying, this image is a very interesting image. It shows the most popular leisure activities among 18 to 30-year-olds and a 31 to 45-year-old living in urban and rural areas. I can see urban residents, I can see rural residents, I can see further education and evening classes, I can see eating out, I can see physical exercise. It's going to be a very limited low score because they're just reading aloud what they can see on the prompt. They need to put it into their own words, like I've been doing. Okay, we're going to move on a little bit and just talk a little bit about Retell lecture. Here is a transcription of Retell lecture. So you'll be familiar that in Retell lecture, the test taker has to listen to a lecture, and then they have to retell it within 40 seconds. And again, here is some useful vocabulary. So normally the Retell lecture, the lecture when your learner is retelling it would start with the lecture discussed, blah, 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 blah. The lecturer mentioned, the lecturer highlighted. So those reporting verbs are really important. So mentioned, highlighted, said, stressed are really important. We've got things like the passive voice. So climate change were emphasized, solutions were discussed. So passive voice is really important for things like Retell lecture. So what the city was developed, things like that, being able to use passive voice and active voice effectively, linking words. We've got furthermore, however, as well as this, but using linking words in a natural way. So it shouldn't be very mechanical. It shouldn't be first, the lecturer, next, second. It shouldn't be like that. It should be more natural how they're using their linking words. And then we've got other things. With Retell lecture, it's not like describe image. So for describe image, you were probably noticing that I was sort of using a format which was, I'll introduce what the image shows, then I'll talk about some overview data, and then I'll go on to the specific data. Whereas for Retell lecture, there's not really a structure that you can use, because generally your students will retell the lecture in a chronological way, the way that they hear, in the same order they hear it. But it's important that they're taking notes, and they're taking notes of any good collocations. So for example, it could be like take action, raise awareness. I don't know, if it was something like economy, it could be economic collapse or something like that. So that's going to score a lot higher than if they just say, if the lecture is about the collapse of an economy, and they say, look, the lecture was about the collapse of an economy in a certain country. If they just say the lecture was about a bad economy, the vocabulary is a lot lower. And then we've got vocabulary frequency, which is again what I was just talking about. Is it high frequency words and very simple words like good, bad, or is it more complex words from the lecture like detrimental, mitigate, exacerbate? Are they using the difficult words from the lecture? And then we've got, is there a variety of vocabulary again? So important again. Are they just saying the lecturer said this, the lecturer said that, the lecturer said this, the lecturer said that, or are they using a variety of different words? If in this example here, we have, it's about chefs. This is the transcription. So this is not the sample answer. This is the actual listening. But again, I suppose the issue here is that they could just say the lecture was about recipes. Recipes are very important. Chefs make recipes. Chefs have to make recipes for cookery books. Chefs have to blah, blah, blah. Chefs, recipes. So the vocabulary is quite limited. Can they use a better variety of vocabulary? Can they say, yeah, I don't know, you've got chefs, you've got cooks, you've got person doing the cooking, you can paraphrase it, person working in the kitchen, these different ways of saying that. So that's it when it comes to Retell lecture. So we've got reporting verbs, passive voice, linking words, collocations, vocabulary frequency, and variety of vocabulary. So quite similar to describe image, the same sort of things that you'll be teaching. I think what you can teach in terms of lessons, you can teach reporting verbs, you can teach passive voice, you can teach linking words. So these are the sort of easier things to teach. This is a lot more complicated because you can't teach them specific collocations that are going to come up in Retell lecture because you don't know what the topic could be. This is more about supporting them with their vocabulary learning generally. One way of doing that is you could ask your learners to have vocabulary notebooks. When you're teaching them a new word, they could write down the word, put it into a collocation. When they're learning new words, if they're using something like the academic word list from Pearson or from other websites, can they try and think of how they're used in collocation, so words that go together. So I don't know, you've got raise awareness of something, you've got I think what else collocates with awareness, increased awareness. So these are all good collocations. And then here we have a practice activity that you can do with your students for Retell lecture, which is to do with what students can do is they can take simple sentences. An example here is the results were good. And then they can try and make them more advanced. The results are positive, impressive, encouraging. And they're trying to make the vocabulary better. And then let's just go back to the score guide and let's look at how for content that would help here we go. So again, a variety of expressions of vocabulary are used appropriately and with ease and precision throughout the response. So again, we've got variety, we've got ease and precision. So if it's just the results were good, They had a good outcome. The researcher was a very good one, and he was impressed. It's a bit limited because it's good, good, good. So this activity is that you can get them to, you can give them a sentence. Oh, let me go back to it. You can give them a sentence, and then they can try and make it more complicated using complex sentences using better vocabulary, upgrading their vocabulary. Now we're going to move on to the two new questions for PT Academics, the two new questions that go into the test from the 7th of August. So summarise group discussion is first. So your learners will listen to a group discussion. It will always be between 3 people having a discussion. The group discussion will last between 2 minutes and 30, 3 minutes. This could be 3 students. It will be an academic discussion. It could be 3 students. It could be 2 students and a teacher. It could be 3 teachers. It could be a variety of things, but there's 3 different speakers. So this is what it looks like. And then your learner will have 2 minutes to then provide a response, and they will have to summarize the group discussion. What we're recommending in some of our test tip documents is that if they want to score really high, your students, and they want to get a really high content score, they should speak for about 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes and try to explain as much as they can. And then here's some of the vocabulary that that your students can use when summarizing a discussion. So we've got some kind of opening. The discussion was between, that's wrong. The discussion was between 3 students talking about student housing. The 2 students and a teacher discussed accommodation options. 3 teachers discussed a university open day, things like that. So you've got your opening sentence, and then you're going through and you're talking about the sort of key points. One way of doing it is you could talk about the themes that come up. So if it was 3 students are talking about a university open day, they're going to be attending the open day. The first thing they discuss is whether they think an open day is a good thing to have for their university. The first student says he doesn't think it's a great thing because they have too many students who attend the open day, blah, 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 blah. Second student says blah, blah, blah. And then the final student adds this and basically disagrees with student 2. Then they move on and talk about a second topic, which is, so you can see here, I'm using relative clauses. So things like the first student who, second student, blah, 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 or they make this point, which disagrees with the other point. So that's one way of doing your summarized group discussion. Another way is you could split it into students. So the first student talks about this, and this. The second student talks about this, and this, and disagrees with the first student. The third student says this, and this, and then you can sort of summarize at the end, have some kind of summary. Giving examples. So the importance for this task is they need to talk about main ideas, but also need to give examples and give details. So if it was an open day, the 3 students agree that they should all attend an open day. The first student details the reasons why and says open days are good for new students to be able to understand the university and get a feel for the university. The second student agrees with this and also says it's good, it helps manage expectations. For example, students might think that the university is the best place in the world. However, in fact, when they visit it, they understand that there's going to be a lot of hard work involved. The schedules are long, blah, blah, blah. Contrasting is really important for summarized group discussion. So some students live on campus, whereas others choose to commute. The first student said this, whereas the second student said that. Private housing is more expensive in contrast to university dormitories. And then we also get reporting verbs, the same as Retell lecture: explained, mentioned, described, highlighted, stressed. And then we've got paraphrasing. So again, because it could be a 3-minute discussion, it's about how to summarize sentences together. So finding affordable houses can be challenging for many students. That's a paraphrase. The university provides various accommodation and caters to different preferences. Again, different paraphrasing. So again, so for summarized group discussion, there's a variety of vocabulary needed. In terms of what's teachable straight away, opening is very teachable. Relative clauses is very teachable. Giving examples is very teachable as well. I think all of these, paraphrasing is more of a difficult skill, will take longer, but I think all of these are teachable for your learners to be able to use quite quickly and flexibly if they're given enough time and given enough practice, and if they're given enough time to remember and use them across a period of time. It's unlikely that if you teach them and this is new to them, that they're going to be able to suddenly use them in the test. They need lots and lots of practice. And here is a practice activity for summarized group discussion, which is guided paraphrasing. So similar to Retell lecture, so students can paraphrase using sentence starters. They can look at their notes from summarized group discussion. Some students complain about the noise in shared accommodation. A few students have raised concerns about, and then they can try and paraphrase. So a few students have complained about the level of noise in the shared living space. They're paraphrasing on the spot. So useful, especially because if they've written so many notes, they need to group their notes together. And finally, we're going to look at respond to a situation, which again is a new task for the enhanced test for PTE Academic, but is an existing task for PTE Core. They're slightly different. PTE Core is a general English topic, whereas for PTE Academic, it will be academic English. So here you go. So the student will listen to and read the prompt. Here is a prompt that we're talking about. You're working on an essay for your course and you're having difficulty organizing your ideas. You approach your professor after class and ask her if you could come to her office to discuss your essay. What do you say to her? And then there's a variety of language that your test takers can use for this question. So what we recommend is that your learners start, so they'll have some time to listen to and read the prompt. Then they'll have 10 seconds to prepare. Then the microphone, not the microwave, that would be nice. The microphone will open, and then they will have 40 seconds to respond. For this question, it's not like they have to go up to 40 seconds. They can achieve a high score in a relatively short, with a relatively short answer, because they just need to respond to the situation. It's important that your learners don't just reuse the words word for word. So for example, if they just come and say, I'm working on an essay for my course, I'm having difficulty organizing my ideas. You are my professor. I approach you after class and I ask you if I can come to your class to discuss my essay. What do you say to me? That's going to be a low score because they're just repeating the words word for word. What we recommend for a responsive situation is that they can open with something like, hi, excuse me, or excuse me, lecturer, or excuse me, Mr. Jones, or if it's a friend, it could be hi, mate, or hi, how you doing, or something like that. Then they can go straight into it. So for example, if it was, excuse me, professor, they can say, and then they can maybe give a bit of information about the prompt. So you know that essay that I'm doing for your course on globalization, which is due next week. I'm really struggling with organizing my ideas. So you can see I'm paraphrasing this as I go. And then they can add some more details. So it's important they add some details. What I'm struggling with is I have so many ideas, but they're not connected and they're not really developed. Would it be possible for me to come to your office, possibly tomorrow, to discuss my essay and how I organize my ideas? Would that be possible? That's it. So it's a very short one. I'm paraphrasing what I'm saying. I'm giving a bit more details. It's very important that your learners focus on what's being said, and they also don't, even though they need to add information, they shouldn't be adding incorrect information. So for example, if your student says, excuse me, professor, I'm having problems with my essay. I can't figure out the correct font to use in Word. I'm using Times New Roman, and I just think it's not a suitable font. That's got nothing to do with organizing your ideas. It has to be connected to the topic. And then here is some useful language. So polite openings. It doesn't always have to be polite. It depends on who you're talking to. right? So it could be your friend is moving to university and you go, hi, mate. I go, oh, so you're moving to university next week. That's so exciting. So that's a lot more informal than if you're talking to your lecturer when you, excuse me, Mrs. Daniels, I hope you don't mind. But start with the polite opening. Your students need to speak in the first person. So it should not be a summary. It shouldn't be the situation was about blah, blah, blah. It should be them talking. They should visualize and pretend that they're talking to the person. And then we've got different structures. So there's a variety of different structures that your students can use in responding to a situation. It's not guaranteed these will all come up. So it's not like every single one will be asking for help. It could be different. It could be complaining. So if you're complaining about something, it's not going to be, could you help me? But your students need to know a variety of functions so that they can use them flexibly to answer these, to respond to the situations. Asking for help, we've got things like, could you please help me? Would you mind? Apologizing. I'm sorry for any inconvenience I've caused. I'm sorry for the inconvenience caused by blah, blah, blah. Please accept my apology. So this could be a situation where you need to apologize to your lecturer for being late. You could go after the lecture and you say, excuse me, Professor, I just wanted to apologize for being late to the lecture this morning. You noticed that I sneaked in 20 minutes after the lecture had started. I'm really sorry about this. I had problems with public transport. I was stuck in traffic on the bus. I'm going to try and make this not happen in the future, and I will try to leave the house earlier. I'm really sorry. So it could be things like that, and that's apologizing. It's opening. We've got polite requests. Could you tell me? So it could be a situation where you need to ask your lecturer about an assignment deadline. Could you tell me when the assignment is due? Might I ask about the deadline for the assignment? Complaining, could be complaining. Maybe you're complaining to your friend that they're not helping you with a group task. I've noticed that you haven't been very active in our group task and I'm doing most of the work. It could be also giving an opinion. If you're something like, if you need to make a suggestion about buying a gift, it could be something like, I think we should, why don't we, in my opinion. So again, a variety of vocabulary you can teach your students, and all these are teachable functions. And it's teaching them as flexible structures. May I ask, blah, 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 could you tell me what comes next? And things like that. And then here's a practice activity, which is students acting out real life situations. You give them different situations and then they're practicing and trying to use some of the language. What you could do is if you focused on one or two of these, so let's focus on asking for help, you could basically ask ChatGPT to create you 5 situations which are asking a lecturer for help, and then you could then support your students to be able to use the language flexibly, fluently, with good pronunciation, and provide feedback. So we've sort of come to the end of the 4 questions. I realize we've only got about 10 minutes left. So I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the speaking resources. So what we suggest for your learners is that they familiarize themselves with speaking questions, they prepare for the speaking questions, and then you can also teach. And there are a number of resources within Pearson that they can use. There's quite a lot here, but as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, the key one for you is the score guide. The score guide should be, I think I'm looking at the score guide in my job every 10 minutes to check what's saying and to sort of compare. So as a teacher, it's so important. We do have videos on the new test format for the enhanced test. Within my PTE, within Smart Prep, we also have question types. The new question types, we have test tips for speaking, where you can now see sample answers, video courses, guided practice tests, and all this is accessible by creating a My PTE account and then clicking on Smart Prep. There are a range of preparation resources for students. We've got a range of teacher resources. So if you type in Teacher PTE, there are some paid resources like Expert 2nd edition. So this is a new course book that is launching soon, which has the updated questions and the changes. And then the official guide is available now. It has been updated to include summarized group discussion and respond to situation. And then there's some other things that have been updated. And then the final resource is we do have a web page called Prepare Your Learners for the PT Academic Updates. If you Google Prepare Your Learners for the Updates to PT Academic, it has a number of resources. It has about 60 questions for the 2 new speaking types that you can use as teachers. It has 20 sample answers. It has the test tip documents. And I will put this into, I'm trying to think, can I put this into the chat? Because we don't have the chat on. But I think if you search Prepare Your Learners for the PT Academic Updates, it comes up with a variety of resources. So I think we've sort of come to the end of this. So I want to open up, see if there are any questions, because I don't have access to the question and answer box at the moment. But the key takeaways from today are teach your students expressions and vocabulary and teach them in an explicit way. So that means teaching them directly what the vocabulary is, how to use it. We're generally teaching things like the meaning, the form, and the pronunciation for all the different speaking question types. You can see that it differs depending on speaking question type. The language you need for respond to a situation is different to Retell lecture. There's a number of free Pearson resources you can use as teachers, and then use the PTE updated score guide to give your students feedback on language and look at the different bullet points, which are so important, those bullet points. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and we're going to, this is your chance for any questions. So we have about 10 minutes left. So if you do want to add in any questions, you can. And I'm going to go through some of the questions here now in the remaining time that we have left. Okay, so I'm going to start with Amna. So thank you very much for the question. So if AI gives more marks for content, will the score can be lower after human checking? Yeah, so Amna, what happens is for the questions that go to a human mark. So as I mentioned, there's a number of questions from August 7th that will go to AI scoring, and then the content will go to a human mark as well. If there is a disagreement between the AI score and the human score, then the answer will then go to a second human who will then mark it, and then the second human then their answer, their score is then taken as the score. So there can be a disagreement, and then that's where a second marker comes in. I hope you found that one, that answer sufficient. Sarabjit, very nice to see you. Where can we find response to situation scoring rubric? So all of this is in the PT Academic Score Guide. So if you go to PT Academic, if you go to the PT website, at the bottom of the website currently, there is a banner that says there are some enhanced changes to PT Academic. If you click on that, or if you just click on Score Guide, you can find the Score Guide, PT Academic Score Guide. It will be purple, which is the new Pearson branding, and you can find the rubrics there. Let's go to Sheeny. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Can we use first person pronouns as in we? So I assume that this is for respond to a situation. So yeah, you can use pronouns like we. I suppose it depends on the task. So if it's about a group, I would use we. So if it's you are working in a group and you need to talk to one of your classmates because they are not working as expected, you can say, look, there's 3 of us in the group and we're really disappointed in you because you're just not working as hard as we are. We feel that we're working every evening to complete this assignment and you're not even engaging. So it can be like that. And you notice also my tone that you can get feeling across, get anger across if it's an angry situation. So you can use we. I wouldn't use we if it was something like talk to your lecturer about a deadline extension. You wouldn't say we, you just say I. And then Mohammed Arif, thank you for your question. Are read aloud marks no longer contributing to the reading module? So that is correct. From August the 7th in the enhanced PT Academic, for PT Academic and PT Academic UKVI, read aloud only contributes to speaking. PT Core will continue to contribute to reading and speaking, but PT Academic is only for speaking. And then we've got a question again from Mohammed. I would be grateful if you could share a detailed table that displays integrated scoring score. So Mohammed, we don't disclose in terms of what scores are. We don't say that write essays, this percentage towards your writing. We don't disclose information like that. What we do disclose in the PTE score guide is we tell you which questions contribute to which scoring. So, for example, repeat sentence is speaking and listening. In terms of your test takers, what I would recommend is that they need to try their best across all the question types. I don't think it's that helpful if we just say, just focus on describe image, forget about read aloud, repeat sentence, because it's not. They need to answer all of them and try their best across all questions because they all contribute marks to their overall speaking score. And then we've got a similar question from Tizama. Sorry, I'm probably not pronouncing your name correctly. And after August 6th, the score from Read Aloud will not transfer to reading or not. Yeah, so from August the 7th, Read Aloud will not contribute to reading for PT Academic and PT Academic UKBR. It will only contribute towards your speaking score. We've got a bit more time. We've got quite a few questions. Okay, so let's have a look at, we've got a question from John at the bottom. I missed the part of your presentation. What is the minimum time required to speak for summarized group discussion? So John, there is no minimum time, but what I'd recommend is for test takers that really want to score high for content for summarized group discussion, they should speak between 90 seconds to 2 minutes, because that way they can cover the majority of the content, and it's quite a long turn as well. The danger is if you have one of your learners who's just speaking for 40 seconds, they're not going to cover all the main points. So they have 2 minutes, and we recommend they speak for about 90 to 2 minutes if they're trying to score very, very high. They can still get a good score if they're speaking for 40 seconds, I'd say, but it wouldn't be excellent. And then let's have a look. This is a really good question from Ashim. If the value in charts is between the range like 50 to 60, instead of getting confused, 50, 60, can we use descriptive words like above 50 or approximately 60? Yeah, so that's absolutely fine. You can use these quantifiers, approximately 60, above 50. I think it's about using a variety, to be honest, Ashim. So using a variety of these quantifiers, but also sometimes the detail. I know sometimes it's quite difficult to identify, is it 56, is it 57, is it 58? But then other times it's quite easy. Like on one of the describe images I showed, I showed it was just 20, and I could just say this is 20. I hope you found that answer useful. And then Fajaruddin, is there an app that can score the speaking practice similar to how PT speaking tests? So there's not an app, but we do have 3 score practice tests that are paid, that students and teachers can pay for. We currently have a 30% discount on all our preparation, and the 3 score practice tests that we have, score practice test 1, 2, and 3, they have the updated questions in them for the enhanced speaking test from August 7th. They have the changes to some of the skills like read aloud, not going to reading, and they also have the extended rubrics. So you can go there now. They are available to buy now. Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left. And I realize there's still quite a few questions. So I'm going to pick a couple more. Shinyi, you said this was related to describe image. Can we use first person pronouns as in we? I assume you're talking about that one. So in describe image, we, I don't think you would use we. I'm trying to think of an example when you would use we in describe image, because you're talking about the data and the values. So the bar chart shows this number increased, there was a marginal decline. So I would suggest that you don't use we, because it doesn't make sense. Maybe you might have to clarify that question again. And then we are getting similar questions about the knowledge regarding weightage of each question type out of 90. So Harvinder, that again, that's something that we don't release, so we don't say describe image is worth this many points towards the speaking. We recommend your learners try their best across all the question types. So I'm going to pick one more question and then close. I think Bartek might have answered the question around this will be recorded. I have forgotten one more thing. There will be, I'm going to close now, I'm afraid, because I've forgotten to mention one more thing. Tomorrow, you will be receiving a survey from us, so you can complete this to tell us what you think about the webinar. And at the end of the survey is a certificate to say that you have attended this webinar. Thank you so much for all your questions. I hope you found this webinar useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all again on the next webinar. Thank you so much. Have a great day.